It's 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday, December 15th, 2020. I'm calling to order the meeting of the Gladstone Planning Commission. Tonight we have a public hearing related to the proposed housing needs analysis. And we'll also have our usual reports from our planning staff. And then at the end of the meeting, we'll have a brief discussion regarding some of our work plan for the year 2021. Tammy, could you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Langston.
Present.
Commissioner Natalie Smith.
Present.
Commissioner Malachi.
Here.
Commissioner Poole. Commissioner Darren Williams. I think you're muted, Mr. Williams.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Pat Smith.
Here.
Chair Milch.
Present. We will dispense with trying to do the Pledge of Allegiance. That hasn't worked out very well in the past, and I notice the City Council isn't doing it any longer. So we'll move right to our agenda. The consent agenda consists just of the minutes of our last meeting. So have the planning commissioners have an opportunity to review the minutes, and are there any corrections or changes?
I've reviewed them. I didn't see anything that caught my eye that needed to be updated.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes.
I'll second the motion.
All right, Commissioner Malachi moved that we approve the minutes of our October 20th meeting. Commissioner Pat Smith seconded the motion. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The minutes are approved. We did not have a November meeting, just for the record, so the October meeting was our most recent one. All right, we move on. The next item on our agenda is the monthly planning report from Joy Fields. This will be a 2-month planning report, again, since we didn't meet last month. Joy?
I will need to update these monthly reports with the new logo. So I apologize that we still have the old logo here, but we are in the city of Gladstone. In October, we did have one contact at the counter at the Development Services lobby. We had 53 phone calls. We had 2 building permits and 1 administrative decision. The Planning Commission held a work session to review the draft housing needs analysis. The City Council amended the comprehensive plan and followed the recommendation of the Planning Commission and planning staff to approve a zone change for 1.04 acres that changed from R7.2 to multifamily residential. And there was an administrative permit to look at a DMV land use compatibility statement. Anytime a vehicle sales business updates their license or renews their license with the state, they have to have a land use compatibility statement. And so we see land use compatibility statements on a regular basis. The building permits were slower in October, but they involved a deck and a remodel. And we are here tonight for the public hearing on the housing needs analysis, as was mentioned at the end of the October staff report. In November, we also had 1 customer contact at the counter. We had 36 phone calls and emails, 4 building permits, and no pre-application conferences or administrative decisions. and the November meeting was canceled of the Planning Commission, as Chair Milch previously said. There was a remodel on 82nd Drive. There were retaining walls at a property on Oakville Road, and picnic shelters at Max Patterson Park were updated. The Planning Commission also is here tonight for the housing needs analysis. Are there any questions about either the October or the November planning monthly reports?
Joy, I think it's helpful to note that even though the picnic shelters at Max Patterson Park are presumably being built by the city, they still have to go the same building permit process as anyone else. The city can't just do things on its own. So it's nice we have that consistency along the way, and appreciate your looking those over. Do other commissioners have questions or comments? All right, thank you. Is there a motion to approve the report of our planner?
I'll make a motion to approve the monthly planning report for October and November.
I'll second.
And I'll second it.
Okay, we've had a motion by Commissioner Langston, seconded by Commissioner Natalie Smith to approve the October and November planning reports. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The reports are approved. Now we move on to the main item on our agenda, which is the public hearing related to the housing needs analysis. We've had, I think, a total of 3 opportunities to review this in the past, in some work sessions, in some joint meetings with city council members, and we've had a lot of public input on this so far. I don't know how much additional public input we'll get tonight, other than one letter that I'll be sharing. This is our opportunity to finally make a decision on whether we pass this along to the city council for approval. And so staff will give us the report and where we are.
So this evening, instead of compiling a PowerPoint presentation, which you all have now seen multiple times, we are going to go through the staff report. If you have any specific questions that require more time on a particular page, please let me know. You all are always very good about finding edits that need to be made. So I appreciate your close review.
Everything up in there. Yeah, I think so.
The X.
No, that'll get you off it.
So tonight we are looking at the housing needs analysis that was the city contracted with Eco Northwest to provide the housing needs analysis with the information, both the demographic data, the buildable lands inventory, and the requirements that the city needs to consider for housing of the future population. The demographic data and the future population data from Metro and Portland State show that Gladstone will be growing from 4,573 households to a total of 4,894 households in the next 20 years. And so that is an increase of 321 households. To accommodate those, the city will need a plan for 321 new dwelling units. The buildable lands inventory showed that Gladstone has 16 unconstrained buildable residential acres, and about 9% are in tax lots classified as vacant, and 91% are classified on tax lot classified as partially vacant. historically, Gladstone has had about 72% of the housing that is built is single-family detached residential units. So that would be in that low-density residential comprehensive plan designation. Gladstone does not have the sufficient land to accommodate either the low-density residential development, the medium density residential, or the high density residential that is needed to accommodate the future growth of Gladstone. You see here that in the low density residential housing designation, with a density average of 5.2 dwelling units per gross acre, there is a deficit of 6 acres. In the medium density residential district, there is a deficit of 10 gross acres to accommodate the density of 8.9 dwelling units per acre. And for the high density residential designation, there is a deficit of 5 acres with an average density of 24.9 dwelling acres per acre. That shows that the city is constrained with land, with rivers on 2 sides, and most of the lots being developed already. There are very few opportunities for new housing. With that in mind, the partially vacant lots and even the developed lots can be redeveloped. And to meet the needs of the future population, the city of Gladstone has to look at the municipal code and the housing audit and the downtown revitalization strategy and the comprehensive plan, and look at how they can be modified to meet the needs of the future population and Gladstone, to allow it to continue to grow and flourish.
Joy, this is Commissioner Pat Smith and also Chairman Melch. Would you prefer us to hold our questions until you're finished, or would you like to take them as you go along?
I do not have a preference, Chair Milch. What is your preference?
Your report is going to be more brief tonight than it was when you used the PowerPoints, I assume. Are you going to try to go through all 20 plus pages, or maybe if you are going to do review the entire staff report, maybe it would be helpful to get some questions, but I know that maybe some of the questions will be answered as you get farther into the report. So I guess it'd be best to hold on, make some notes, and let's see what gets covered in the staff report outright. And if there's something that still needs to be addressed, we'll bring it up at that time. Let's try that.
Fair enough.
Okay, so as Chair Milch said, the staff report goes into details that begin with the consistency of the statewide planning goals. And there are 19 statewide planning goals that we have to look at as a jurisdiction to make sure that the comprehensive plan and any amendments to the comprehensive plan are in line and supportive of the statewide planning goals. And the reason for that is when this housing needs analysis is adopted and approved, it will be going along with a comprehensive plan amendment so that the comprehensive plan references the updated data that is identified in the housing needs analysis. So the housing needs analysis, the hearing that we're holding tonight, is being held tonight because the city had to notify DLCD that there was a post-acknowledged plan amendment to the comprehensive plan. And so whenever the comprehensive plan is amended, even if it's just to reference the current data that is available on future population growth, the Department of Lands and Conservation Development have to be notified along with the citizens. And so that is part of goal 1 is citizen involvement, ensuring that the citizens of the city of Gladstone are aware that there is change happening, that there is land use planning taking place. And so part of the citizen involvement is providing notice to them. So a notice was published in the Clackamas Review, and it was also on the DLCD's website for post-acknowledgement plan amendments, or PAPA. It was also on the Gladstone website. So the citizens have had the opportunity to provide input in addition to the input that citizens had the opportunity to provide during the work sessions of the city council or the planning commission. They were also involved in the housing audit that took place a couple years ago. And so the people that were involved in the housing code audit of 2019 were made aware of the housing needs analysis and all of the opportunities to provide input. Therefore, based on the findings of public notice and opportunities for involvement, the comprehensive plan amendment to adopt the housing needs analysis as referenced is consistent with statewide planning goal 1. Statewide planning goal 2 is to establish a land use planning process and policy framework as a basis for all decision and actions related to use of land and to assure an adequate factual basis for such decisions and actions. So cities have comprehensive plans and they need to be updated. Goal 2 actually says that they need to be updated as needed. They need to be revised on a periodic cycle to take into account changing public policies and circumstances. So looking at the current comprehensive plan that references population data for the year 2000, by adopting the housing needs analysis as a reference document, the comprehensive plan is taking into consideration the changing circumstances of the demographics of Gladstone and the future housing projections.
Joy?
Yes.
I'll just interrupt here because I know we have some soon to be seated elected city councilors in attendance, and for the benefit of anyone else who's not familiar, I'm holding up a copy, trying to get it in front of the camera, of the Gladstone Comprehensive Plan, which is really 2 thick documents. One of them, the one I'm holding up, is called Inventory and Analysis. The date on it is April 1979. It includes reference to the number of housing units and the population of Gladstone for the late 1970s. And that's where the planning population goal that with the city would try to provide housing for a population of 12,000 people by the year 2000. That's included in this document. We just got an updated population report from our city administrator last week in her weekly report that indicated that we are almost up to 12,000 population in the year of 2020. So we have grown at a much slower pace than we expected to back in the late 1970s. But this current document will provide us with updated information based on good methodology and good reporting and analysis. the data that we have in this old report, as I understand it, college students from Portland State University walked up and down the streets of Gladstone counting homes. It was kind of done on an old analog style approach. These days we have a much more advanced approach to doing these things, but this will give us some of this data and jobs and income and things that are referenced in this old report would potentially be updated by us adopting this new report, which includes much of the same kind of data, but much more current. So we're not going to go over all that data, but it's just good to know that 40 years later, we're finally getting our first real update on a lot of that.
So looking at the statewide planning goals, we have an old comprehensive plan, as you mentioned, that we have to consider on whether or not the amendment and the adoption of the housing needs analysis is in line with the current comprehensive plan. And the current comprehensive plan includes a land use housing goal that is to provide and maintain a high standard for Gladstone's quality of life and to ensure a factual basis for land use decisions and actions, and to establish a planning process and policy framework for this purpose. So that factual basis for land use decisions, we can go back to the housing needs analysis once it is adopted, if it is adopted, to look at the need for any future changes to the comprehensive plan and the Gladstone Municipal Code. We can also refer to the housing needs analysis to get an idea of whether the housing goal is being met. The current housing goal is to meet the housing needs of all segments of the population through optimum utilization of housing resources and for the construction, rehabilitation, and maintenance of the diversity of housing types at appropriate locations, price ranges, and rent levels, while preserving and enhancing the integrity and identity of existing residential neighborhoods. The buildable lands inventory that is included in the draft housing needs analysis analyzes the existing development patterns and intensity and the land and development values and the existing land use designations and zoning districts and the natural resource constraints that are in Gladstone, such as floodplain and steep slopes and habitat conservation areas, and determines where there's vacant land or land that is likely to be redeveloped that could serve to be the area where the future housing units are developed. The housing needs analysis provides information about the factors that could affect housing development, including demographics, affordability trends, workforce housing availability, market health, and regulatory structures. And so therefore the housing needs analysis and comprehensive plan amendment to adopt the housing needs analysis as reference are consistent with statewide planning goal 2. Many of the other goals are not as applicable to the housing needs analysis. Goal 3 and 4 pertain to agricultural and forest lands, exclusive farm use lands and ag forest lands and timberlands that the city of Gladstone does not have. And the city of Gladstone policies that are required to meet these goals are not changed by the housing needs analysis. Likewise, the open space, scenic, and historic areas and natural resources that are protected by statewide planning goal 5 are not changed by the housing needs analysis. The City of Gladstone Municipal Code has zoning overlays that were adopted by the city to provide protection for the significant natural resources that are protected by statewide Planning Goal 5. And those include the habitat conservation areas, the open space district, the water quality resource area district, the Greenway conditional use district, and floodplain management area. The comprehensive plan amendment to adopt the HNA as reference does not change any of these programs or code districts or zoning overlay districts that ensure that the City of Gladstone is complying with statewide Planning Goal 5. Similarly, Goal 6 programs are not impacted by the housing needs analysis. There is nothing in the housing needs analysis that changes the habitat conservation area district, the water quality resource area district, or the floodplain management area. Therefore, the comprehensive plan amendment to adopt the housing needs analysis as reference is consistent with statewide Planning Goal 6. Goal 7, the statewide Planning Goal 7 is to protect people and property from natural hazards and covers areas subject to natural disasters and hazards. You notice there's a repeated couple of zoning districts here. The water quality resource area, the floodplain management area. These are both designed to protect natural resources and the life, safety, and welfare of Gladstone residents. The housing needs analysis does not modify these zoning overlay districts or design standards related to protecting development from hazards. Therefore, the adoption of the housing needs analysis does not change these adopted inventories or overlay zoning districts. And adopting the housing needs analysis as reference is consistent with statewide Planning Goal 7. One of the things I will note that writing the staff report was a great way for me to get to know Gladstone a little bit more, delving into each of the statewide planning goals and the projects that Gladstone has been involved in to meet the statewide planning goals was beneficial for me to be reminded of. The city completed the Parks Master Plan in 2017. So in addition to the zoning overlay districts that I am very familiar with from a planning perspective, the city also has other master plans and projects in place that are compliant with statewide Planning Goal 8 and meeting the recreational needs of the residents of Gladstone. Again, the housing needs analysis does not change any of these master plans or overlay districts and is consistent with statewide Planning Goal 8. Goal 9 is the economy of the state. And it is geared to providing adequate opportunities throughout the state for a variety of economic activities vital to the health, welfare, and prosperity of Oregon citizens. And again, the housing needs analysis does not change any of the plans or policies or implementing regulations that are designed to be compliant with Goal 9. However, it highlights Goal 10. Statewide Planning Goal 10 is related to housing. And the goal is to provide housing for citizens of the state. And so this is the meat of why we need a housing needs analysis, so that we can ensure that the city of Gladstone is complying with statewide planning goal 10. The goal 10 requires the city to maintain and plan for an adequate land supply to accommodate at least 20 years of future growth, providing flexibility in housing location, type, and density. So again, the low density, medium density, and high density residential zoning districts provide that flexibility for housing type. So you can have apartments or attached single family dwellings, or you can have a detached standalone home. And so having zoning districts with adequate land area to accommodate a variety of different housing types is both consistent with the statewide planning goal 10 and also the city's own comprehensive plan. Currently, the housing goal for the comprehensive plan of the city of Gladstone is to meet the housing needs of all segments of the population. I have read the entire thing previously, but it's important to remember why we are here tonight, holding this public hearing on the housing needs analysis. And right now, objective 1 of the comprehensive plan is to provide for the housing needs of a minimum population of 12,000 by the year 2000. It is now 2020, and as Chair Milch mentioned, we're almost there. But we have a reliable methodology that is shown in the housing needs analysis, and maybe it is more accurate that 321 households will be added to Gladstone in the next 20 years. We will see when 2041 comes along. So the city's proposed housing needs analysis responds to the city's updated 20-year population projection and provides data on the number of housing units the city will need to serve to meet the future population needs. And the housing needs analysis also provides the inventory of buildable lands to ensure that the comprehensive plan map is up to date and adequate. In addition to the need for additional housing as identified in the summary, the housing needs analysis also identifies the demographics that could affect whether the housing is affordable currently or in the future. The housing needs analysis identifies that Gladstone has an unmet need of affordable housing for renters and homeowners. Currently, about 44% of Gladstone's households are cost burdened. That is why you all held that public hearing back in October regarding housing affordability and the issues with being able to afford housing. That is highlighted in the housing needs analysis. Therefore, the housing needs analysis and the comprehensive plan amendment are consistent with statewide planning goal 10. The remaining statewide planning goals are similar to those that were not directly impacted by the housing needs analysis. So goal 11 for public facilities and services, the housing needs analysis does not change any of the master plans the city has recently completed or the methods by which the city ensures that there are public facilities that are compliant with statewide planning goal 11. Goal 12 is transportation. And the transportation system plan of 2017 is not changed by the housing needs analysis. or by the comprehensive plan to adopt and incorporate the housing needs analysis as referenced. Energy conservation. There are some building and siting design standards in the Gladstone Municipal Code that address energy conservation, and those are not addressed in the housing needs analysis or modified in any way. And therefore, the comprehensive plan amendment to adopt the housing needs analysis as reference is consistent with statewide planning goal 13, or is not impacted by the housing needs analysis. Goal 14 is urbanization. Goal 15 is the Willamette River Greenway. Goal 16 to 19 are really focused on the coastal areas of Oregon. They include the estuarine resources, coastal shorelands, beaches and dunes, and ocean resources. I feel like before we should go forward, if any members of the public or planning staff, if they have questions about the statewide planning goals, would it be a good opportunity? Or should I finish the last couple pages?
No, this is good. And in case there's anything about those, Commissioner Pat Smith, you raised a question about whether you wanted questions to be asked. Did you have one?
Well, I'm not sure where to start on this. You know, there's a minimal amount of dirt to build things on in Gladstone. And I'm wondering about changes in building into the air. And I look at the city of Milwaukee, where the Bernard Garage property, I believe, is 5 stories high. A property on the corner of Harrison and Main Street, which at one time was an old Safeway store, has been developed into multi-use, and I believe is 3 stories high. And I think we have a limit in Gladstone of 2 stories. And as Portland Avenue is redeveloped, which it will be over time if it's as successful as we hope it would be, it would seem that some multi-use things along Portland Avenue with residential above and businesses on the main street would seem to be to help to defray the amount of land that we don't have. Any thoughts on that from anybody?
Well, I would say, let me say, first of all, just in terms of the zoning regulations right now, we have a 35-foot height limit that applies to most of the city of Gladstone. And that could be about 3 stories, really. It would be not difficult to have a 3-story building 35 feet high if it didn't have too high peak to roof. But in the C2 zoning area, which includes the downtown, we do have a slightly different height limitation. And that also includes the area, the commercial area over near the Safeway market. So the hotel that's next door to the Safeway is actually 5 stories, kind of a 1 level below,
right,
below the parking ground level, and then 4 stories above that. And that is permitted if there is fire suppression systems in the building on the upper floors. The limitation is mainly due to what our fire department is capable of, addressing. And if we have sprinkler systems in higher buildings in either the downtown or the other C2 zone areas, they can be taller than the 35-foot limit. An additional floor or maybe an additional 2 floors can be added. But those issues would relate to, changing that would relate to potential changes in the zoning code or in the, not the zoning code, but the building code. And those would be the possible implementation procedures that we would use if we want to be able to address the potential shortage of housing that this report seems to indicate we're likely to have. So it's kind of a 2-step process. We could choose to accept the data that says we will need this, we are anticipated to have this much housing needed and this much land available to do it. And then we really get into strategizing of how do we find that housing capacity within our city? And the way we find that capacity might involve the kinds of things that you're referring to, changing the code, allowing taller buildings, allowing smaller lot sizes, some of those things. And that's really the kind of next step beyond this. But it's good that we're thinking in that direction, because to get the data and the analysis is the thing that motivates us to say, okay, what are all the ways, the possible ways that we could do this, and what would be the best way for the city to try to achieve those goals?
I will say that the previous approval for Dennis's property on Portland Avenue was for 3 stories. It was 1 commercial on bottom and 2 residential on top.
And during the housing code audit that we had in 2019, they were reviewing some of the recommendations that came from the downtown revitalization plan that was adopted, most of the work done on that in 2017. And they were talking about mixed use development in downtown. There was a lot of emphasis on the commercial aspects. But now that we're focusing on a very strong housing need and an affordable housing need, one of the experts reviewing the code audit said, maybe don't put so much attention on mixed use with commercial on the ground floor, maybe have more housing on the ground floor in downtown. So, those are things to be considered too. As our needs changes and our needs change and our focus changes, we may not consider all of the recommendations that came from the downtown revitalization if we want to shift the emphasis more to housing. I'm wondering, John Southgate, do you have any input on that issue in general? You've been our downtown guru on this stuff, and I know that you've expressed the view that perhaps the downtown is a place for some more high density apartment development and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and Troy, I hope I'm not stealing your thunder. I don't know if you're going to have me speak to these issues at the end of your report as sort of the next steps, or yeah. Well, maybe I'll say briefly that sometimes you work on an effort like this, like a housing strategy and policies and implementation measures, and things are at 6s and 7s. I think in the case of Gladstone, there's this really happy alignment of adopted policy. The city council a couple years ago adopted the downtown strategy, which does call for somewhat higher density. It might be another floor or 2. I don't think you're going to see high rise, but also calling for some mixed use. I appreciate what Chair Milch is saying. I think there's probably going to be, I will probably recommend you have more flexibility and not require that every building have the entire ground floor devoted commercial, or whatever the strategy calls for. But I think maybe the most important thing I could say is all the work that you've done to this point, all the work we're doing tonight is all a prelude. The real game will be in next year. I think after the city council, assuming you endorse this H&A, perhaps with some modifications, that's your prerogative. But then it'll go to city council early in the new year. City Administrator Betts has asked me to participate in the city council retreat, I think in late January, to talk about housing policy. And then soon in the new year, we'll begin the actual process of amending the code. So the downtown work, the code audit, the H&A, everything we've done so far is policy stuff. It's important, but it doesn't directly bear on, if I'm Dennis Marsh, thank you. I'm getting old. If I want to develop my property right now, the regulations applied today are the same regulations that have been in place for years. In about a year's time, I'm hoping that the zoning is better aligned with what we're hearing from the H&A, the need for more housing options, what the downtown revitalization strategy. I've talked with Mr. Marsh. I may have forgotten his name, partly because he's a beav and I'm a duck, but I'll let that go. But I think there's great opportunities. The other point I guess I want to make, I don't want to talk too much, but you may recall Chair Milch and others, when Jackie Betts first hired me, my main focus was talking to developers about what do they see in downtown Gladstone. Forget about what the zoning may or may not be, just what do you see? Well, when we talked about the trolley bridge, making upgrades to Portland Avenue, seeing the development pressures from places like Milwaukee, let alone Portland. Every developer I talked to, for-profit, nonprofit, market rate and affordable, all said Gladstone is going to happen. It's not if, but when. And yes, yeah, John Southgate, make sure the zoning code aligns with what we developers would want to do. But there's developer interest, and every one of the developers I spoke with, I should emphasize, are quality developments. And if you all want to ever do a tour or something like that, I could show you a dozen great projects in this region that these people have developed. So it's the sort of stuff that you will be proud of. It'll generate more customers for businesses on Portland Avenue. So I don't even, I start getting excited here, but I think Gladstone's future is really bright. I'm excited for what the future holds.
Thank you, John. Are there other questions related to the state planning goals that Joy has summarized already, or should we let her go on to the next set? I can't see everyone on my screen, so you'll have to speak up if you want to comment.
I was just going to say that I would love to have a tour of some of the developed properties so that we can get a good vision and concept of what we could apply to our downtown revitalization plan.
Well, I'll work with City Administrator Betts on that. I think sometime maybe in the spring when
Okay.
COVID is behind us and the blossoms are out. But yeah, I think maybe some Saturday, maybe we'll have some lunch or something like that. Joy will probably buy lunch for all of us, I'm sure. So she's a very generous person.
Thank you.
So back to the staff report, if there's no questions about the statewide planning goals. The City of Gladstone Municipal Code sets out requirements that have to be met anytime the comprehensive plan is amended. And so there is a section on who is authorized to initiate amendments. And the request to consider the preliminary housing needs analysis and make recommendations to the City Council came from the City Administrator or their designee. And so this criterion is met. In addition, the review process sets forth that a public hearing is required. And so we are holding a public hearing tonight on the housing needs analysis, and the Planning Commission will make a recommendation to the City Council, who will then hold another public hearing prior to amending the comprehensive plan. Now, there are no conditions being considered by staff. That does not mean that you all may not have conditions of approval for the housing needs analysis, but staff are not recommending any at this time. And the applicant, being the City of Gladstone, did not supply evidence that this fulfilled a public need and was best carried out by granting it at this time, because it was not a zoning map change. No zoning districts are being modified by this amendment and by the proposed housing needs analysis. And so the evidence was not required. There are currently no conditions recommended by staff, and conditions of approval could be placed by Planning Commission or City Council, but staff are not recommending any at this time.
Sure.
And so I am done with my presentation. Chair Milch, do you want me to leave the slide up, or would you like me to stop sharing so everyone can see themselves?
We've seen the slide, and generally, I think we know kind of the locations of the vacant and partially vacant land, the public land. If you keep it close by so that we can refer to it in case questions come up, we have, once you remove the constrained land, then the colored section really declines in volume on there. There's not much left, and that's why we have such a shortage between the amount of land available and the amount of land required for the projected growth. And you're showing some of these charts that are in found in the report. The one at the top here shows the number of units that were constructed by year over the last 20 years. You'll see a big jump in the year 2000. There must have been a large apartment multifamily dwelling or more than one done back then. I wasn't here then. I don't know which one it was. 2016, I know, is the Webster Ridge, is that name, apartments that we recently did some rezoning related to that one, and that was over 100 units. Most of them, though, if you look by year, are single family dwelling units, fewer than 20 a year. 2018 may have been the year that the ones on Glen Echo were put in. That's one of the larger numbers, recent numbers of single family homes added to the community. But you see, other than a couple of large spikes of multifamily home development, the addition of new dwelling units per year has been fairly modest, particularly since 2004. This housing needs analysis projects a need to construct about 16 dwelling units per year over the next 20 years. And that would be a faster pace than what we've done most years, except for the one large apartment complex that went in 4 years ago.
However, one apartment complex could serve half of those 321 needed dwelling units.
That's true. If we had the land to do it,
Right.
it could happen. We sometimes describe ourselves as being built out, or some people use the term built up. What that mostly means for Gladstone is that most of the land, the vast majority of our land that can be built upon has been built upon. And if anything new is going in, something old most likely will be coming out. So we may be replacing commercial properties with other commercial properties, or doing some rezoning and replacing some with housing. And some single family homes may be at some point replaced with multifamily homes, the duplex, triplex, fourplex homes that are now allowed or will soon be allowed under state law. So with every gain in housing units, we also may see some losses in whatever has to be torn down or rehabilitated in order to create new housing. And that's what happens when you don't have the land to just put new housing on. All right, we're back to being able to see one another. This is the time we can get some public input. Tammy Bannock notified me before the meeting that we had not received requests from members of the public to participate. She did send me a letter that I want to read into the record. It's pretty short, from the Fair Housing Council of Oregon. And it said, "Dear Commissioners, this letter is submitted jointly by Housing Land Advocates, HLA, and the Fair Housing Council of Oregon, FHCO. Both HLA and FHCO are nonprofit organizations that advocate for land use policies and practices that ensure an adequate and appropriate supply of affordable housing for all Oregonians. Both HLA and FHCO are supportive of Gladstone's new 2021 to 2041 housing needs analysis. Furthermore, the Goal 10 findings are well written and a good example of a conscientious planning staff. The staff report will be used as an example for other jurisdictions. Good luck with the continuation of this project. Thank you for your consideration of our comments. Sincerely, Alan Lazo, Executive Director, Fair Housing Council of Oregon. And a copy of this was sent to Gordon Howard at the DLCD in Salem. So we're getting positive feedback from nonprofit organizations that commend that we're doing this at all and the good job that our planning staff has done. So Joy, you know, this is kudos to you for your work in preparing that part of the report and the analysis. And I'm glad to have that on the record.
Well, I did have help from DLCD and John Southgate and Jackie Betts with editing the staff report. So thank them for their time and efforts.
Well, good. We have a good team at work here, and that's important.
It's true. Joy only did about 95% of the report, so she needs to share the credit.
So I know that there are members of the public in attendance. And I wonder if there, first of all, let me open or ask a member of the Planning Commission to make a motion to open the public hearing so that beyond the written reports, we can hear directly from members of the public in case there anyone present tonight who would like to address the commission.
I'll make a motion that we open the public hearing.
All right, it's been moved.
I'll second. Pat Smith.
Okay. Motion by Malachi, second by Pat Smith to open the public hearing. All in favor of opening the public hearing, say aye.
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 All right, the public hearing is now open. If there are people present who would like to address the commission on this or raise any questions, I know that we have council-elect members here tonight. This may be, for some of you, the first time you've been hearing on some of this. Although I think you have also attended some of our past discussions of this. So Mindy, Anessa, Greg, Mayor Stemple, if you have any additional questions, unmute yourself and we will try to recognize and hear you. This is not a requirement. I just wanted to give you all that opportunity.
I have no questions. I'm just here to observe, but thank you.
All right. Thank you, Anessa.
Hi, how are you? I have no questions either. I'm with Anessa. I'm here to just look and see what's going on and hear the report. So hopefully after 2 times, because I'll get to hear it again in January, that I'll have it all together. But thanks for the invitation to speak.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you, Michael. I just like the other two, I just thought I'd get a little more insight and information on how these things, the works go. Thank you.
Very good. Well, you know, the real heavy lifting on this is going to be up to you three and the rest of the city council in next year, because that's where some of these decisions on perhaps making zoning changes or building code changes will come into play. So you know, it's good to get informed now and kind of know the basis for all this. And I'm glad that you are all here watching and that this meeting is being recorded for anyone else to watch as well. So, well, in seeing no one else, Mayor Stemple, you are unmuted. Would you like to address any of these issues either?
Well, only that I'm so impressed with this whole process. This has been long time coming, but all of these deficiencies just kind of reinforced to me that we need more land. So I think we need to annex. That's the direction I'm thinking. So I'm sure that will be discussions moving forward at some point, hopefully.
Very good. Well, and that's helpful. You know, there are kind of 2 approaches. You can try to annex more land and meet the housing needs by having more land available, or, you know, work on increasing the capacity of the land that we have. I noticed that in Planner Field's report, the section regarding water and sewer and those kinds of resources in the city were not directly addressed by this. But if we're going to have additional housing, we have to be sure that our water system and our sewer system and our stormwater system have the capacity to handle that. And this comes just a week after the city council has voted to adopt new rates for our utility system, and that will enable the city finally to do some of the upgrading that it needs to do on those systems. And if some of that upgrading could identify areas where we have sufficient capacity to add more housing, that will play an important role in trying to add housing capacity within the existing city limits. And then the council will also consider whether trying to annex additional land would be another option for meeting housing needs. This analysis is based only on the land within the current city of Gladstone boundaries.
Chair Milch, if I may.
Yes, yes, Commissioner.
I appreciate your making that point, because I believe that Gladstone needs to consider annexation, and we also need to look at how we're going to increase density with the existing land. But I wanted to clarify two things. One is that we're strictly talking about the current city boundaries, and we don't really have any jurisdiction, even though we might be looking elsewhere. The other is it's a point of order. We're in a hearing and we're having the mayor participate. Is that an issue? I'm not trying to silence the mayor, but I'm a little concerned about that.
No, I'll let David address this. This is not a land use hearing per se. This is a legislative hearing, but David, do you want to address that issue?
Thanks, Chair Mills. That's the distinction. It's a legislative matter versus a quasi-judicial one. So there isn't any ex parte concern that we would maybe think about most often with land use in quasi-judicial matters.
That's great. I just didn't want down the road for her to have to recuse herself because she's involved now. And I apologize, I was working and I wasn't here for the start of the meeting. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Les. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you raised that question, because it's good sometimes to point those things out. When we go to, when we provide public notices and have public hearings and all that, it's so similar, even the references in our code, so similar to what we do on the more complicated quasi-judicial land use hearings, that it's important to make that distinction, which type it is. This is the type where we really want to get as much public input as we can, so that our legislative decisions are informed by a broad spectrum of the public. This is not going to affect one individual property owner the way a quasi-judicial hearing would do. And so we're looking at the needs of the community at large, and we want input from the community at large. But thank you for raising that question. Are there other members of the Planning Commission who have comments or questions, concerns about the report, any aspect of it?
I actually do have a question, actually.
All right, Commissioner Malachi.
Yeah, let me see if I can share. Oh, I do not have permission to share. Okay, so
is there a page in the report that you'd like to refer to that someone?
Yeah, 380.
Which page did you say?
3-80.
-80.
So this page is from the actual study prepared by Eco Northwest, the more detailed study with a lot of the logistics about the statistical information.
So one of the things I was looking at here is that when we look at the renters and owners versus total on 2012 to 2016, for example, it seems to indicate that 78% of the population is cost burdened, but then the total says 34%. And I'm not sure how those numbers correlate. And if it's unclear, maybe that's something we need to have spelled out. Does anybody know how the numbers for total are derived?
Oh, I believe it has, it's a weighted average of the numbers.
So more
if-
of an average?
Right. If more of the population, if the high population of the city were renters and, you know, a certain percentage of them were rent burdened, then that number would have a higher weight in determining the total figure. So
But that total then is not a total, then it's an average?
That's right. If you look at the entire community as a whole,
yeah,
20% of the entire community is, although among the people who rent, a higher percentage of them are rent burdened, are cost burdened, but a lower percentage of the people who own the property are cost burdened. And
so if 50% of renters are cost burdened, because severely cost burdened people are also cost burdened, right? So if 50% of renters are cost burdened and another 28% of owners are cost burdened, I still don't see how we get a total of 34.
I think it's because the way I read this is there's more homeowners than there are renters in Gladstone. And so the owner number, it would be weighted, the total would be weighted closer to the owners than the renters. I guess Chair Milch just said that. But.
Okay, so if possible, maybe by the time it gets to City Council, if there could be something here that makes that more clear, I think that would be ideal before it gets adopted.
Okay.
And then in a related note would be on the next 2 pages, they show other numbers that don't seem to correlate to these numbers. So like on 381, it shows that the Gladstone homeowners is 31% cost burdened, whereas the last page says it's 28%. And then on 382, it says renters are 62%, but on page 380, it says it's 50%. So I want to make sure that these charts are also consistent with what they're reporting. And if there's a reason they're not consistent, that the reason for that is called out as well.
And I think it's the time period. The latter pages, you're right, those are, the numbers are different between the latter 2 pages you just cited in the first one. And I think, I'm just looking at the heading, it looks like that's from several years ago, whereas the first set of data you referred to are more recent.
They're all 2012 to 2016.
Oh, I stand corrected. Okay.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that whatever's adopted is consistent, self-consistent.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Thank you.
all right, do other planning commissioners have questions or comments about any part of the report, either Joy's report or the more detailed report that's included in your packet?
Yeah, if I could real briefly, boy, this is a lot of work that's gone into this, and I really want to compliment this. I've had things put in front of me before that were pretty hard to track and follow, and my only closing comment is that we're trying to look through an odd crystal ball right now, and there's a lot of uncertainty out of there, and so these numbers from 2016 aren't that old, but everything we can do to keep information as up to date as possible as we move forward would be appreciated, because again, it's a very uncertain time, and anything we do here, I know we're all looking at it that way, and I'm not trying to be preoccupied with the future, because we need to make a decision on current reality. But yet, if we're not honest with the uncertainty, then we're going to make some decisions that we may end up having to change in the future. So that's all I had. And again, I really appreciate the way this is put together.
Yeah, I think I made a similar observation last month that with a lot of this, we have very good, accurate data from most of the last decade. But just if you look at the things that happened in the year 2020, and many more people working from home and no longer commuting, and having to educate their children at home because schools were closed. People were moving to larger homes because they wanted to have outdoor space in their own backyards because they didn't want to go out in the public with people. I don't know how much the events of 2020 are going to have a long-term impact on the style of homes that people want to live in, the places they want to live, the way they do transportation, the way they even engage with their workplace. But it will be interesting to follow. I appreciated all the trends that were reported through several pages in this report, but none of them were really up to date as far as the total change in the world that happened in 2020 because of COVID. You know, we'll take that in consideration. I mentioned last month that one of the candidates who was running for city council was proposing that we have, you know, look into the possibility of citywide fiber optic cable for residents, which would be something very helpful if people continue to do schooling at home or work from home. And we focus a lot on transportation needs, but who knows, over the next 20 years, we may find that broadband internet, you know, access in our homes is more important than public transit when it comes to working and doing things in a world where we've had an experience with a pandemic. So, you know, all of these things, all of these trends are helpful, but like Les says, we can't, you know, we can't just look into a crystal ball and get a clear picture of what things are going to be. We go on our best understanding of what's going to happen and what's likely to happen, but it's, you know, we could be very surprised. Other comments from commissioners?
Chairman Milch, your comment about high-speed internet, Hillsborough is currently instituting a program they call Highlight, and it's going in by neighborhood, and for the very reasons that you mentioned.
I've read about that. I've read, you know, that nationally, local cities trying to do high-speed internet on their own haven't met with much success. There have been some real difficulties with it. But even if we were able to identify a part of the city where housing could be built that had, you know, multi-gig internet access for people who chose to work from home rather than, you know, be involved in the transportation system, you know, that would be something that might be considered at a future time. We did not talk about this. The report didn't make much reference to it. One of the things that sometimes changes in communities, the need for multi-generational housing. I mentioned last month that I was reading a book that talked about more people doing that. In particular, some immigrant communities, there is a culture where multi-generational housing is part of you know, their tradition. And I know of some faith communities that are working on developing housing in, well, in the one I know of in particular is in the Washington County area for the members of the Sikh religious community who, it's a religious faith originated in India. They're facing some discrimination and profiling because the men in that religious faith wear turbans and have beards. Sometimes they are confused with other faith communities. And so what they wanted, what they needed was some housing and close to their place of worship. And some of the faith communities are working together and providing apartments that had more than 3 bedrooms because there are very few apartment complexes that provide enough housing for large families. And so I noticed that this report anticipates about a 7% growth in the number of households, but only about a 4% growth in the population of Gladstone over the next 20 years. And that may mean that we have a number of people who live in very small size houses or dwelling units. We may have some studio apartments and 1-bedroom apartments that would satisfy that need. But there also may be a growing need for people to have multi-generational family homes. The the homes that are being developed over in the Jennings Lodge area where the
Yeah, they offer it.
yeah, Commissioner Langston, you know about this. That used to be the, what was it? It was like a retreat center for a church community, I think. But they've put in single family homes over there that are being marketed as multi-generational homes. They have a separate entrance and a separate kitchen facility and bedroom and bath facility. And so that may be part of the wave of the future of how homes are developed among the single family. We've also talked in this group all year long about accessory dwelling units as another option. John, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, if we do, I really would love to do this tour with you all. And in addition to, checking out some more typical mixed use, multi-story projects, there's some, I guess I'll call it programmatically innovative housing projects around the region. For instance, there's a group called Bridge. Oh boy, I think there's more to their name, but anyway, there's projects in St. John's and North Portland and in Beaverton where they have housing for retired, for the elderly, commingled with affordable housing for families, I think typically single parent with children. And the idea of this, I've heard a lot about intergenerational over the decades, but this is really putting feet on the ground where, if you live in, if you're a senior person, and maybe you know how to tie fly rods or something like that, you'll teach the little kids. And I think it's actually a requirement. It's sort of a soft requirement. If you're not up to it this month, that's okay. But it allows the older people to do to do something other than watch TV, and it gives little kids who may not have exposure to sort of the tribal elders, it gives them that. So I think, Chair Milch, maybe you and I could sit down sometime, maybe Joy, and just think about if we spent 4 or 5 hours on a Saturday, what would we want to see?
There's also a facility, I think it's NEA Generations over in the Lentz neighborhood. And it's the same thing. It's elder community. They help with childcare and whatnot while mothers and fathers go to work. Yeah.
There's also some great examples. We've been talking about cottage clusters the last few years, but actually I could think of some examples that have been around for a while. There's one in Southeast Portland I think it's off of Holgate. So I just think there's stuff that, quality built, nicely designed, mixed income. Some of it is market rate, some of it is more affordable. Sometimes it takes, state and federal tax subsidies, but there's all kinds of exciting models, and there's all kinds of people doing good work around the region.
And I think it's important for us to point out again, as we did last month, also we have some government subsidized affordable housing already here in Gladstone. One large project of which just recently did some good renovating and upgrading of their facilities. So it's not something that's falling apart, but it's something that's improving. We have a large owner or what's the term? Homeowner-owned mobile home park that has recently done some upgrading to its infrastructure, his water and sewer infrastructure, or maybe just water infrastructure, I forget. And we have the project going in on Webster Road, which is sort of a single room occupancy housing for over age 55 adults, with services associated with the housing. So there are some housing types in our community that really address the affordability issues in a variety of ways, but that are doing very well, things that we can really be proud of in this community. I think if you look at the very last pages of the Eco Northwest report, pages 3-102 and 3-103, they begin to get at some of the ongoing planning efforts and changes in the comprehensive plan, the more detailed changes that will have to come up later on. This is where this work will really get done. The report that we have is almost just data oriented, you know, this many houses, this much land, this many units required. But when we go about to actually implementing it, this is where these are the pages that describe how a lot of that will be done. And so again, that will be, we will be sharing with the city council and with the community in trying to determine the best way, best strategies to use to implement these things. And it will involve us going back and examining the code audit work that was done in 2019, the downtown revitalization work that was done in 2017. And as John says, it's nice that all these things are coming together at the same time. It really is a serendipity of planning things that relate to one another and that can be done in a way that really enhance one another if done correctly. We haven't said much about House Bill 2001. That's the one that we will be working on the language given to us by the state to allow duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes in residentially zoned areas. We haven't talked at all in this group about Senate Bill 1051, which is adopted in 2017, which allows faith communities and nonprofits to do affordable housing on some of their land. In a lot of communities, churches are considered a conditional use land use in residential zoned areas. Our most recent experience with that was with the Tri-City Baptist Church land that was proposed to be purchased by the apartment up on Webster Road in order to have parking. But it could be that there are some churches in Gladstone who have acreage which was not included in the housing needs analysis, that they at some point may decide that part of their mission would be to provide affordable housing to the community on land that they are stewarding now. And so we may see that happen. I've been in contact with some people that are doing that in the Portland area and have begun doing it in the Clackamas County area too. And, you know, for us to be sure that our code is amenable to those kinds of developments would also be an approach that we might take in the future. The county is working on implementing some of those parts of the changes in state law. They're phasing in all the various things that they're doing to implement those things, and that's in the phase 2, Joy informed me. But we can get some guidance from the county on that sort of work as well. I'm told that in Portland, there are over 600 acres of land owned by churches that could potentially be used to build housing. And a lot of churches, I've seen their attendance drop. They have more parking facilities than they needed at one time, and they're deciding to use that to build housing to serve members of the community. So we could see that in Gladstone as well. I noticed, I looked at the Google map of the Seventh-day Adventist property, and I always thought that when they had the recreational vehicles on site for their summer convention, that they were only parked on that area that you can see from outside on the corner of Webster Road and Oatfield. But I discovered looking at a Google map that there's actually a much larger area on the interior of that property that actually has little streets with names on them, like Main Street and Poppy Road or something. And that's where RVs are parked. And perhaps somewhere in the future, that could be a site of housing as well. It might take us, you know, we might have to look at our code and what, you know, what it allows on that type of property. But there may be more locations than we know of currently for this.
Chair Milch?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Natalie. Commissioner Smith, I have my hand raised because I was wondering, are you looking for someone to make a motion to approve the analysis before us so we can move on?
I think that's where we should do. You know, all this discussion will come later. I just, you know me, you get me started. So yes, I would appreciate it. And I think the motion would be to recommend.
We should close the hearing first.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I make a motion that we close the public hearing.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved by Commissioner Natalie Smith and seconded by Commissioner Langston to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, the public hearing is closed, and now I will entertain a motion. Natalie Smith, you had a motion to make.
I would like to make a motion to approve DLCDTA grant 21-183. Do I need to read anything more?
That is the project. Well, I
Don
think
has
the
his
motion
hand up.
would be to recommend to the city council approval of the housing needs analysis.
Okay. I would like to make a recommendation for the approval of I still need to say the DLCDTA grant 21-183 for the City Council of Gladstone, Oregon to approve it.
All right. Joy, is that motion adequate for what we need to do here?
The grant funded the work of Eco Northwest to complete the housing needs analysis. So I'm
Okay.
not sure that it is necessary in the motion because it's the housing needs analysis that you are recommending to the city council if you so move to do so. But I see that the city attorney may want to weigh in.
All right, David?
Yeah, I would just say, Commissioner Smith, ultimately the intent of your motion is to pass along with the recommendation of approval of the housing needs analysis. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, I think just clarifying that for the record, the motion is fine. It can be seconded.
All right, do we have a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
All right, it's been moved by Commissioner Natalie Smith and seconded by Commissioner Langston that we approve and recommend to the City Council the adoption of the housing needs analysis prepared under the grant of the DLCD. Is there further discussion among commissioners?
I'm just going to make the comment that they are planning on doing an update, I believe, before the next release to the City Council, based on the earlier conversation.
Who is planning to do an update?
John, was it? Are you the one going to be doing that update, or?
Well, are you talking about the data inconsistencies that you pointed out? Because yes, I think between Joy and myself, one of us, Joy, it's up to you, but we should definitely let Beth know that we need to clarify that discrepancy. So yes, so your motion might want to include as amended with regard to the graphs on those pages. I don't have those right in front of me.
Exhibit 51, Exhibit 52, and Exhibit 53 need to be reviewed for consistency and potentially amended.
All right. Natalie Smith, are you amenable to having that as part of your motion?
Yes, so moved.
Okay. And Commissioner Langston, that was your intent in seconding that as well, I'm sure, right?
Correct.
Good. All right. Are there other questions or comments from commissioners before we take a vote? Very well. The motion is before us to approve the housing needs analysis and recommend its adoption by the City Council with some amendments to clarify certain of the exhibits shown in the main document. All those in favor of adopting this, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, I heard no opposition, so I'm going to assume that we have a unanimous vote to adopt this. Unless, David, should I have done a roll call vote? Would it be better to do a roll call? Okay, we're fine then.
Nope, it's fine.
Okay. Thank you. That was the main thing we needed to accomplish with this. We did not, we had some discussion of implementation strategies, and that will guide us in our next step of our agenda, which is really to look at some of our work plan for 2021. And that may involve strategies of how we do this implementation, which parts of the downtown revitalization code change recommendations, or which part of the code audit report recommendations we choose to try to draft and adopt in conjunction with the City Council. So that could be a key part of our work strategy for next year. Are there other, if you turn on the agenda to, let's see, what page is it? Section 4, Tammy Bannock has provided us with a summary of the work plan that was prepared in 2019 with excerpts from the minutes of January when we discussed briefly a work plan for 2020. It was a preliminary discussion that we thought would go on in upcoming meetings, and then there were no upcoming meetings for a while, so that didn't get very far. And then tonight has really given us some direction for additional work plan ideas. The question came up at a recent meeting, were we going to take another look at the accessory dwelling unit code requirements? I had brought some in from Oregon City as an example of some that were a little broader than what we have currently in Gladstone, that would make it easier for people who have indicated an interest in doing ADUs to do them here. That would certainly be one part of what we would do. Are there other things that commissioners would like to have as part of our work plan for 2021? Commissioner Poole?
Yeah, I think it's already on there, and it's related to just about everything and every discussion we have, and that of course is the parking issue. And I'm not sure how we can address or what emphasis we can place on, the transportation changes that we're hoping for in the future, because the metro measure failed, and so realistically, money for the trolley bridge and some of the other things is farther down the road. So not that I expect us to work on the trolley bridge. I don't expect us to give up either. We've got some uncertainty there, and I just wanted to express that.
Right, the trolley bridge, and also some of the work on the McLaughlin transportation corridor were part of the things that were in that metro transportation package that failed at the ballot in November. So we were looking to see how that would impact some of what we do. If there's not a trolley trail bridge, will that impact what development could go on our downtown? So good, I'm glad you reminded us of that. That changes the situation a little bit. And we'll have to see in the broader context of what happens in the future, and whether Metro tries to pursue more in the in the transportation field in the future. But parking, I've submitted some information for commissioners on parking management and some parking strategies, and some of the recommendations in both the downtown code and in the code audit had to do with changes in minimum parking requirements, whether that just becomes a market-based thing chosen by a developer who should know how much parking their development will need, or whether we have strict rules about it in our city. That's something else we can be considering. So you want to see the parking continue to be part of our work plan, and maybe done in coordination with the Traffic Safety Commission in Gladstone. We had some input from one of their members recently on this issue as well. So those are two issues that sort of affect one another.
This is Commissioner Smith. I would like to see us also focus on our process and how we move forward and implementation of the Planning Commission, so that we can be very effective and streamline some of the things that we do as we move forward. So just continual improvement to be a better planning commission.
All right. All right. We will work on that. We will have at least one new member next year, perhaps more. We have some applications in. I have not seen who has applied to join the Planning Commission, but there will be a need for some training and some, always a little bit of a learning curve at the beginning, but that can include some process-related things.
Yeah, process improvement.
Very good. Thank you.
Is the code audit, is that kind of like its own thing that we don't really need to track on as far as our work plan goes? Is that something that will just kind of happen organically, or do we need to put an emphasis on it in our work plan?
Well, I think staff will be assigning us, it's kind of a weird thing. We don't want to initiate that ourselves. It needs to come out of a process once policy is adopted by the city council. But if the city council, perhaps in a work session with us, decides that certain sections of the code need to be audited, we will be involved with that process. We'll have to conduct public hearings and give notice, and it may be, if it involves certain individual land sites, it may be a land use hearing as well, and we will have to follow that procedure. But as far as just a work session, a brainstorming on what would be the best way, I think that's best that we don't establish that policy ourselves. That policy would probably be established by the city council with input from staff. Jackie, how would that normally be done? Or Joy, would you be looking at recommendations on specific sections of the code to change and then bring them to us for hearings?
Sure, Chair Milch. So I will chime in on this. I actually think that the Planning Commission could be quite busy in 2021 trying to get all of this work that we've done to come to fruition. The next step after the City Council adopts the housing needs analysis then is to take the housing code audit work that we did in 2019, the downtown revitalization plan strategy code amendments from 2017, the changes for House Bill 2001, and package those with the community engagement strategy that we're just finalizing. And I think that, yes, the Planning Commission will have hearings coming to them and making recommendations to the City Council in 2021. So now it's time to package all of that. And like Mr. Southgate said, try to get all of this implemented so 1 year from now, we can attract some thoughtful developers that want to help us. So that's what I envision being on the work plan for the Planning Commission in the next year.
Okay, so
I would say also that the codes that I brought to you from the state back in June, some of those will start filtering in as well from the state of Oregon. They'll mostly be coming through DLCD and the building code division. Some of those climate change codes that were changed at the state level.
Okay, and I think it's important then that as Administrator Betts described it, we package these things together. We don't try to do them independently of one another, but we really look at them holistically. And as we come to know those codes related to energy conservation and climate change impact, that they will inform some of the decisions we make on the others as well. So Commissioner Malachi, I'm glad you're keeping track of that.
You also want to ensure that any code changes are supported by the goals and objectives in the comprehensive plan. And so tonight you adopted an amendment to the comprehensive plan to ensure that it had data from the housing needs analysis referenced in it, but the goals and objectives have not changed.
Right. So even though those were originally adopted back in 1979, they have continued to serve us well. And the need for diverse types of housing, housing that meets the needs of all levels of income, those are still underlying principles of how we do housing here in Gladstone. As Planner Fields pointed out in her staff report, we are still being consistent with those goals and objectives as we move forward with this housing needs analysis and the other potential changes that we will make. And we want to ensure that we continue to be consistent with those, that we don't go off in a new direction. It involves technically an amendment to either the zoning code or the comprehensive plan to make a lot of these changes, but the underlying goals that are foundational to them, we need to adhere to them. All right, well, that's helpful input. Is there any other input from members of the commission on goals? As City Administrator Betts pointed out, we have our hands full for next year, and I'm glad we have an excited group of new city councilors to work with as well that will help us to do this work together and make some of these hard decisions. And I'm grateful for staff at all levels, Joy from the county, Tammy and John and Jackie and David here through the city to help us along the way. All right, let me move to business from the commissioners. Let me ask you, I'll go down the line one by one. If you have any additional business or things you'd like to share, Commissioner Langston.
No new business from me today, thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Natalie Smith.
I don't have anything to share, but I am curious, are we losing a couple of our planning commissioners?
The situation is we have two people whose terms expire this month, Malachi and Darren. Darren has indicated to me, the last I heard, that you would not be reapplying. Your work situation is such that your time is limited. Is that right, Darren? Do you want to say something more about that? You want to unmute?
Gosh, thank you. I just sent out, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. No, I couldn't, I don't know what's going on with my system here tonight. I've not been able to, I've been going through the book, have not been able to capture anything. I am retiring my post. I wanted to thank everybody for being on. It was a pleasure to serve with all of you. I got another business I started, and I can't give the time like it deserves. And this next year, listening to you, everybody all evening, you have your work cut out for you. And it's going to be very challenging to put this all together and to make it work. Going back to the church, since I have not been able to speak this evening, which is, you're probably lucky. Getting the idea of having some of these churches to be able to do that could really satisfy Gladstone's to meet their current needs. As time goes on, because there is a lot of land that is available for them, or that they own, especially the LDS there on the corner, and that might be something that they would be very interested in potentially doing as time goes on. But no, thank you, everybody. I don't have anything. I've been with you the whole evening, even though the picture I have is me staring back in the camera here. So wasn't the most glorious evening, but thanks everybody. I appreciate it, and I have no further business.
Well, thank you, Darren, for all of you have brought to us. I mentioned to you before, it's always good to have someone who works in the industry to bring that perspective to us. And also, knowing that you are expecting to be as busy as you are, you take this job seriously enough to know that you want to give it the amount of time it needs. And we are sorry to lose you, but we appreciate, the serious quality that you brought to participating in it. So thank you.
No, thank you. And I do have a fella that that I think is going to be potentially, hopefully, stepping up to hopefully replace me, who would be phenomenal. So
all right, so good. We have some applicants, and the application process has been extended, so the city council will have an opportunity to review applications for this. Malachi, I don't want to put you on the spot, but
Yeah,
are you?
no, that's good. I am. This is my final night. It's been 6 years now, but honestly, I up until 2 weeks ago, I was also working 2 jobs on top of this, and I just need to take care of myself for a while. I am kind of burned out just in general, and you know, I might come back at some point, but for now, I just need to stop.
Well, we appreciate the detail-oriented way that you have approached this work over the years. I have seen you in action in this setting and others as well, and you bring a very thoughtful analysis to what you do, and we want to thank you for that. So it looks like we will have 2 new commissioners in 2021.
And I'm going to miss working with the both of you so much. I'm sorry that we're losing you.
All right. Thank you, Natalie. Let's see. I'm trying to mentally picture moving down the line. Malachi, did you have other comments or business that you wanted to share tonight?
No, I mean, I was going to bring that up anyway. So, you know, I've obviously enjoyed working with quite a few people here, and you know, I'm still in Gladstone. I'm still around. It's just I'm going to take some time for myself and hopefully start sleeping once in a while, and we'll see how it goes.
Well, and as a private citizen, you know the language. You can participate in the hearings and bring your own expertise and experience at any time.
True.
You're always welcome. Let's see. Moving to the other side, Commissioner. Let's see. Oh, Commissioner Poole, it's your turn.
Well, thank you. I certainly will miss working with Malachi, and Darren's been a real pleasure. I've got a lot of contracting experience, and I've got a real appreciation for what he brought. You know, since it's Christmas time and I do have a sense of humor, I'd love to make a motion to refuse to accept their leaving, but we don't have that kind of authority. So I want to thank them, and I say that lightly, but they'll be sorely missed. And we do definitely got a lot of work in front of us. I did have one quick question that possibly Tammy Bannock or someone could answer. We've kept the application open, and when is the cutoff date for folks to apply for the commission? Does anybody have that handy?
I think it's the 31st.
No, it's January 4th, Monday, January 4th at 5 p.m.
So I can update you a little bit on the process for appointments to the committees. At the last city council meeting, because we have 3 new city councilors coming on board in January, they decided to go ahead and leave the application process open through the month of December. So people still can apply for that. It will close January 4th, and then at the January 11th city council meeting, the new council will talk about whether or not they want to do interviews or how they would like to appoint people. Planning Commission will be okay because you have 5, so we'll just need to make sure that you have a quorum to conduct business if we have a land use item that comes up in January, but it will probably be February when the appointments are finalized for the committees.
All right, that's helpful to know. Commissioner Pat Smith, do you have a?
I do have a couple of real quick things for Commissioner Planner Fields, who has been credited with 95% of the authorship of this tome we looked at tonight. On page 315 in the authorization to initiate amendments, I think in 2021 almost, we ought to do away with the his designation and use some kind of a gender neutral pronoun about our city administrator.
That is also throughout the comprehensive plan.
Right. I'm sure it's a cut and paste issue, but probably ought to be addressed. The other one is everybody beat me to it in saying goodbye to our two colleagues on the pleasure working with both of you. Darren Williams, if I say anything nice about him, he will hold it up for the rest of my natural life that I did actually say something nice about him, but I will. And lastly, with the incoming city councilors that we have in attendance tonight, we also have 3 that are leaving. And Linda Neese and Neil Reisner both gave a lot to the city in terms of their effort, and it's to be appreciated. But specifically, Councilor Mercero is with us tonight, who's worn many hats. I believe he's even been on the planning commission at one time, been the mayor, the city councilor, and he's been an advocate for the planning commission. He attends all our meetings. He's always asking questions. And we hope you don't go away, Councilor Mercero. Thank you very much. And with that, I'm done.
Okay. I will just say, let me echo what we've said before. We appreciate those that have been here and served this year. It's been my first year on the commission and first year to chair it, and I appreciate the guidance and help that I've had and the very positive, constructive feedback I've had from members. I didn't always do things right, and sometimes I talk way too much, and I'm glad that you're willing to tell me that when I need to know it. And so I appreciate it. I am also excited about the changes at the city council level. The votes, not just in this city, but in other cities around the region, have shown that there is a real openness to considering some of the issues of justice and equity, and land use is no exception when it comes to that. Land use isn't just about, about land use. The land doesn't decide how it wants to be used, people do. And the decisions that people have made have embedded in them a deeply rooted body of assumptions about race and class, and about how those who perceive themselves to be of a higher status in either or both respects use their power to regulate land use to keep out the rest. That's the legacy we live with, and it's something that I think we need to continue to try to overcome. It's that densely woven fabric of practices, institutions, and behavior that have led to manifest and multiple inequalities that have been such a stain on our nation, and that we have really focused on this past year as a nation. And so I hope that at the local level, we'll be aware of those things, and that will underscore and inform a lot of the decisions that we continue to make about land use. This report that we've had about housing needs, it's very clear that some segments of our community are behind financially and will continue to be because of institutional and systemic decisions made in the past. And to try to overcome and move beyond that will be a challenge, but I hope it's one that we're up to working on, and I hope that we will have good support from the City Council in addressing those needs in the future. So I want to thank all of you who are in attendance tonight, who participated. Thank you, Anessa, for your hand clap there on the screen. And Councilor Mercero, would you like to make any comment? This is your last meeting as our council liaison, and I want to underscore what Commissioner Smith said. We have appreciated your help and participation on this. Do you have anything to add?
Well, the council has kicked me out at this point, so I've put an application in to be in the planning commission.
All right.
And hopefully I will be appointed at some point. I would enjoy working with the group, and I think the last couple, 3 years has been a lot of boilerplate type work, and now there's going to be a lot of thinking on the projects to be to come up with some different models and such to make the growth of Gladstone a reality. A lot of important subjects, such as parking and making that model so that we can use affordable housing. I would like to see the model to include the trolley bridge from the Oregon City side all the way down and past this new Civic Center. And to me, there's got to be a lot of excitement in making those things happen. Most likely a heck of a lot of work, but we'll see. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Councilor Mercero. You're right. I think lots of times we wait for developers and homeowners and others to come to us and request us to act on their decisions, but we may find ourselves doing a lot more proactive long-term planning for the city. And I think that will be an exciting challenge. And I look forward to working with our staff and planners on doing that in the future. Natalie Smith, are you raising your hand? I see fingers moving across. Did you have another
No,
comment?
I'm just scrolling through my screens.
Okay, all right. Yeah, that's the way it is with the phone sometimes. We see your hand moving. Okay, well, I believe that's all the business we have for tonight.
I'll make a motion if I could that we
All right.
adjourn.
Les Poole has moved that we adjourn. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
All right, the motion has been made to adjourn the meeting by Les Poole and seconded by Natalie Smith. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
All right, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming and participating.